Good morning, everyone, and happy Thursday. This is Sarathel Burgess Burnett, Deputy Commissioner here, Children's Services Division at the Department of Family and Support Services. We are doing virtual between 3 different locations this morning. So Tiffany, go ahead and introduce.
I'm Tiffany Junkins, Manager of Family and Support Services. Great to be with you guys this morning. Tom?
Hi, my name is Tom Mose, and I'm a Program Development Coordinator helping out with on the technical end of the webinar today.
Great, thanks everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. We have only a few slides that we're going to go over this morning. I wanted to leave a little bit more time for discussion. And also I do want to just say that today we are jam-packed here in the division. After we finish this meeting, we will be moving directly into an all-staff meeting with our Children's Services Division staff. And so for that reason, I abbreviated the number of slides, going to move to questions, answers, discussion a little bit earlier in the webinar than we usually would. And we will be opening mics and giving people an opportunity to talk to us this morning. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and go through the slides really quickly. So the agenda today, again, I'm just going to go over reopening childcare, reporting positive cases, are things that we have to continuously communicate to make sure that we're all doing it. And again, thank you for everything that you're doing out there. I'm going to repeat again what we talked about last time about the competitive grant status because of some questions that we've gotten. I do want to give you an enrollment update, and I'll give you a little bit more information when we get to that as to why I'm giving you the HHS enrollment update, and then we're going to move directly from that into updates and discussion. Next slide, Tom. So just wanted to give you an update. As of this week, we have 257 of our sites that have opened. Our delegates and partners are open. They're serving children and families under the new licensing standard that we are bound to during this particular period. And they're also following CDC guidelines, which is what was used as one of the services or information structures as we were pulling together all of the guidance for reopening childcare. EDPD was a part of that, and of course CDPH. But it's that guidance that everybody is required to consistently follow through childcare as we were reopened and serving children in childcare centers here in Illinois. Children and families are being served, and I just want to reiterate, and again, this is a real huge thank you to everyone out there, and I know this is a very trying time as far as doing the work that we're doing and serving children and families during a pandemic, but I want to thank you and acknowledge that we do have delegates and partner sites that are serving children and families both in classrooms. We're still serving some of our families remotely, and we're also continuing to conduct virtual home visits. And again, we're in a new reality of how we're serving our families. And I thank everyone for thinking outside the box, your creativity, the ways that you have been able to continue to engage with your families, and also the engagement and everything that you're doing with your staff. We recognize that this has not been an easy journey for anyone, and it has lasted longer than I'm sure many of us anticipated when the sites closed in March. But we're here now. In a few days, we will emerge into September, still in the midst of COVID-19, still making constructive decisions about how to continue to serve children and families in early education, and how to do it safely, how to ensure that we are making the right decisions based on the right information. And I say that because the guidance that we have really is about medical guidance, because this is a pandemic that we're living through, and making sure that we're consistently thinking about how best to serve children and families, but again, how best to serve them safely. And again, I want to thank you for everything that you're doing. And related to some of that is the decision that we know the CPS has made. It will be virtual during the first weeks of the school year. We do know, and I have heard from some individuals, and when we get the mics open and can talk a little bit more about it, I just want to make sure that we're acknowledging the fact that we know that staff and teachers and your parents are having to make decisions about how they're going to serve their families starting in this new school year. You have staff who are parents of children. You have teachers in your classroom who are parents of children that are in CPS schools. And we know that your parents have children both in your programs, and many of them have children also enrolled, their older children, in the K-12 system. With that said, we are going to put together a survey so that we can better capture the information and what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're planning for as we're moving forward into this next month of service. And so want to acknowledge it. Again, we'll have an opportunity when we get further into the discussion to talk a little bit more about that. Next slide. And so again, I just want to reiterate and remind everyone that when we are seeing or hearing and receiving notification of a positive COVID-19, either an individual staff, it could be a child, it could be a parent of a child, it could be someone who has come in contact with someone who has a positive COVID-19, that you're required to report to your licensing rep. You have to let them know that you have received notification. You are also required to report to CDPH. They have put together a questionnaire. It has been provided to you. If anyone still needs access to that, we can send it back out. But you're required to complete that notification and make sure that CDPH is aware. What we are hearing and what we know is that once that is done, that there's a contact that is being made back with the delegate to talk about more information to help make the best decision about, are we closing the classroom for 14 days? Do we need to close at all? Maybe the impact is that the person hasn't been in the site over this last 2-week period. And so instead of having to close the site, it's an acknowledgement. In some cases, it's closing classrooms. In some cases, it's closing sites. And we recognize that this is what we're going through, but we also recognize that that is how we will mitigate risk. It's making quick decisions as soon as we hear so that we can ensure the safety of all our children and families, making decisions to inform your parents, inform your staff. You also need to be informing your policy council and your board. They need to know what's going on within your sites and centers. They shouldn't hear about it just as an anecdote from somewhere else. And so as you're reporting and as you're gathering information in line with your updated policies and procedures that you were required to create, you must inform your staff and you must inform your families. I do want to also acknowledge this piece. You are serving children and families in classrooms, and you still have some families that are being served remote. So when you're doing your reporting, our recommendation is you let everyone know that you've had a positive case. Your parents who are not in your sites may also have relatives in your site or a staff member who's a relative. We all know that, we have all kinds of relationships, familiar relationships among us. And so one of the things that we do recommend is when you're making notification, that you make a broad notification so that everyone understands what's going on within your child care centers. Again, just to reiterate, we are asking that you notify DFSS. We are asking you to inform your Children's Services Division team supervisor. They are giving us that information. We do have a tracking system. Just want you to know that we are tracking all reports and we're consistently reviewing. We are here to support you. We don't want you to think for a moment. We know that we're all remote. We're living in this new normal, but we are still here. DFSS, Children's Services Division, we're here. And so if there's any need of any additional support, please do not hesitate. We understand how difficult this time is out there for all of you. Next slide. And so I just want to go over again, and I gave you this information last time, and it is the same information. These are just different slide templates. But our Head Start, our Early Head Start grant is in competitive status. And what I should have added, and I will do in talking to you, our Head Start, Early Head Start, and our Early Head Start Child Care Partnership Grant. They are in competitive status, and in competitive status because of health and safety violations that did occur in delegate and partner sites. As a result of that, we are in competitive status, meaning that we will be writing a competitive grant once that new application becomes available. I do want everyone to understand there's another aspect to that, and I just want to be real clear about it. And my rationale for doing that is because we still need delegates and to be reporting. We have talked to all of you. We've given you an updated memo back in September about the requirement for reporting, but I have to reiterate again that that requirement is still intact, even though we are living in a different world, meaning that we are here working and living virtually and not necessarily seeing each other. It does not negate the fact that we are still responsible, meaning your delegates, your partners are still responsible for reporting any incidents. If you have partner sites, their responsibility is to report to you, then your responsibility is to report that to us. If you don't have partner sites and you're directly operating sites, again, your responsibility is to report directly to us. That's one of the issues within our grant. That is one of the reasons was one of the issues within the notification regarding our grant status. The designated renewal system is not new. It's been out for years, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands there's certain violations that are just non-negotiable. The violations that did occur at the sites under our grant were non-negotiable violations. These were health and safety violations related to child injury, also corporal punishment. Those kinds of things are just non-negotiable. They're non-negotiable for us, and I just want to go back to November of last year when we had a conference in November, which was on health and safety. And I said over and over again, and just wanted to make sure that everybody understood the severity of those kinds of incidents, and making sure that everybody understood from us as your grantee that we have a responsibility for all of our children, regardless of what program or site they are being cared for. And we want to make sure that every one of them are in a health and safety environment. And so the designated renewal system, same iteration of concerns, making sure that we understand our responsibility for keeping children safe. But again, the violations that did occur at those sites were non-negotiable items, and as a result, has put our grants into competitive designation. We will be submitting a competitive application. The City of Chicago will, as I'm sure all of you would anticipate us to do so. We anticipate the release date for that application coming out in a little over 2 weeks, which that date that we have right now is an anticipated date of September 7th, with an anticipated submission date of November 6th. We started the process of discussion here. Yes, we will be submitting a competitive application. We are looking forward to writing this competitive application. It gives us an opportunity to really think about our programming, and also to talk about some of the great things that we've been doing over the last 5 years. And so again, we are going to submit, and I have had questions from individuals. Yes, we will be submitting that competitive application for both our Head Start Early Head Start grant and the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership grant. Next slide. So I do want to give you an enrollment update. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we have, when we went and we moved into COVID-19, we had our enrollment that became static as far as Head Start is concerned. And so when we're looking at our Head Start numbers and we're looking at your enrollment numbers, those are the numbers, and I said this in our last meeting, those are the numbers where we're looking at when we're gathering data from you, that we're looking at and anticipating this is where your enrollment is. In relationship to the fact that we have funding flexibility, keeping those enrollment numbers, knowing that we are either serving, as I said on a previous slide, either center-based, meaning in classrooms, or if we're serving children or families remotely, or if we're serving them in home visiting programs, we still should be serving the families that were enrolled in your program pre-COVID. If you're dropping children, or if children are leaving you, we're capturing that information as we speak, because we do have an obligation and a responsibility to HHS to be reporting updates on what's happening within our programs. I do want to draw your attention to our overall enrollment number that's on this slide pre-COVID. We were at 73.4%. And I want to explain to you why that number 73.4 would have been a little bit higher if have not been for HHS holding us to a higher Head Start number than we actually put into our Head Start application. If you remember, our Head Start number was 7,404. We're still under that number. We were at 6,470. I remind you that we had one large organization that did get out of the Head Start business with us, meaning Catholic Charities. So a good number of that, over about 400 of those, were at Catholic Charities. But with that said, we still have a higher number for Head Start, 9,274. And so when we're looking at our Head Start percentage based on the 6,470 against the 9,274, it does in fact bring our overall enrollment down even more. And so one of the things I want you to recognize is that we do have some work to do. We know we're coming up on September. We do know that you have children and families that are transitioning off to kindergarten. We know that you're in the midst of trying to enroll and fill slots in your program, either center-based or remote. But enrollment is key, and we recognize this difficult time of attempting to do that. But we want to bring this to your attention that we're still obligated, and we still have these numbers in front of us as far as our needing to ensure that we're currently enrolling. Again, that financial or fiscal flexibility is there, but it is locked in, and it is connected to our continuing to serve children and families in Head Start, early Head Start CCP, and for us also early Head Start expansion. And so I just want to recognize that we know what you're doing. We know how hard this is, but I just want to keep your eye on that lens. Just wanted to share with you our average enrollment year over year, just so that you can see over our last 5 years. In 16, we hit a 91%. In 17, we were at 94%. And then over 18 and 19, we were able to make 100% of our enrollment goals. And so we do want to increase our numbers. We want to continue to enroll. We would like to move from this 73.4%. Again, we recognize the difficulty in this arena, but we will be working with you regarding enrollment. As you know, the application has launched. You should be receiving acknowledgement for families that have selected your programs as their site of interest for serving their children. We want to make sure that you're connecting and using that system and working with families who are connecting with you. What we still do have through Illinois Action for Children, a hotline. Parents are calling in. They're trying to get information about where they might be able to enroll their children. We also still have the Chicago Early Learning website, where families are in fact tapping in and getting information about your sites as well. With that said, we want to make sure that your front door is secure through COVID-19, but we also want to make sure that you're working within your system and communicating with families who are interested in enrolling in your program and receiving their phone calls, connecting back with them via email and other information that you have for those families. Again, you can and should be still enrolling families through this process. And just want to make sure that we are keying that up. I gave you the Head Start number, and I wanted you to see that number, but I also want to recognize and remind everyone that we're still having PFA, Preschool for All, and we still have PI, and we need those enrollment numbers also. We need you to continue to be enrolling families across your funding sources.
Yeah, I think this is good. So, Rachel, I'm glad that we're showing this information. I think that there's a lot of opportunity here, and I'm glad that people have an opportunity to see the difference in what HHS wants us to be, which is the 9474, and where we are. It's a big difference. It's a big difference, and we're going to need everybody's help in order to achieve our enrollment goals. We still have Head Start slots available, as you guys know, and those will be available. I think the opportunity here is the fact that because of the flexibilities, we are allowed to go ahead and serve remotely, and we're allowed to do some face-to-face. Although it is limited, we are allowed to do both. And I think that if we look at that as an opportunity for families who are interested in engaging with us, even if it is e-learning or remote learning, I think that perhaps that may be the difference in us being able to go ahead and pick this enrollment number up.
Thanks, Tiffany. So we're going to go ahead and move. That was the last slide. I said I did have a very brief deck of slides for you. I do want to go ahead and see what questions we have, and we will be opening up the mic to let some of you actually talk to us about how things are going out there and to see what kinds of concerns you have. The 9,274 is the number for Head Start. Yes, it is for Head Start. That is a Head Start number. And it is, if you look at the slide that we just had up, that is the Head Start number is 9,274. The early Head Start number was 2,162. So they're separate numbers that are there. It does not include the early Head Start. Thanks for asking that, Leah. An urgent concern regarding the delivery of mental health services in the new year. Will the scope of services be updated in light of COVID-19? Current licensing and CDC guidelines do not include or highlight guidelines for delivery and monitoring of mental health services. Namely, how are we ensuring general and individual observations can be implemented? Meanwhile, CDC acknowledges the increase of mental illness and substance abuse during COVID-19. I'm reading all the way through this, I apologize. But the presence and support of mental health consultants in early Head Start childcare programs are key to the well-being of all, in my opinion, and an essential resource for teachers and programs for continuing the identification of child abuse, domestic violence. I'd like to call attention to the still ongoing issue of family violence, child abuse in homes across Chicago, particularly in light of e-learning and reduced classroom sizes. The cleanest, calmest room in the house will be the room where a child is conducting e-learning. The small video screen may be utilized to hide a bigger issue. Stressed out abuse partners may refuse in-person child care or pickup drop-off in fear of physical harm. Children reside in households where domestic violence and abuse is occurring and are at significant risk. Research by NIM and the health institutes in light of COVID-19 expressed that stress and associated risk factors for family violence, such as unemployment, reduced income, limited resources, limited social support, are likely to be further compounded. And I'm going to stop there. Let me just say, everything that has been said in this particular comment is something that we all need to keep our eyes on. You're absolutely right. We do have to look at how will we provide mental health services. We have to look at how we provide all services that would traditionally walk in your door. And what we're asking everyone to do is think about their model and how do they work with you remotely? How do they provide services and resources to you in the environment in which we're living? We are all concerned about the incidence of violence and the things that are now we're blinded to. What would normally walk in your door and you would be able to see and at least have some idea of what's going on with children and families. You're absolutely right. That small screen that you're looking at doesn't give you that lens into that household. We are as concerned with you regarding all of that. One of our divisions here, domestic violence, here in the division, we are in concert and conversation with them as well around some of these same issues because we are looking at numbers and we know, for example, there was a point in which numbers of calls went down because, again, and we recognize some of the reasons we believe those were happening is because we have a person who is the victim, but also the person who's the victimizer, both now structured in the same environment where she may have had the opportunity to make a phone call. She may have had an opportunity, and let me just say she or he may have had an opportunity to make a call or do something. Now, because of the construction of being isolated in the same household, they're not being afforded those kinds of opportunities. And so we are just as concerned as you. It's one of the reasons that we did trauma-informed training. It's one of the reasons we're going to continue to do those kind of models. We're seeking individuals who have those kinds of models in their hands because we know we need to do more. We need to be offering to you more support, more services through this pandemic. Again, many of the ways that we're able to do that does not provide us that hands-on, site-by-site, face-to-face interaction where we're able to do our work. We know that many of the mental health providers have also had to move to virtual. They're doing their visits by phone. They're doing all of those things. And so as we move forward, we're thinking about how we're best able to do this and working with our support service contractors so that we are not going to stop providing services. We're just moving them to the same kind of platforms that we're having to talk to you through. But we have to continue to provide resources and services. The at-risk factors that you mentioned here regarding family violence, when we're looking at unemployment, when we're looking at the reduction of income, when we're looking at the limited resources, especially those in our communities, due to everything that's happened, the looting and everything that's occurred. Our families are suffering. Our staff are suffering. And let me just say that. We're suffering right now through a very, very tragic time. Not just one piece of it. We have COVID-19. We have violence in our communities. We have all of these things going on. Listening to the news this morning before I could come in about 2 tragedies yesterday. And we could just speak to the tragedies the day before, the day before, the day before. Our families are impacted by this every day. We recognize that this is hard and this is harmful, and we recognize that many people are falling back on some of those things that they were able to move away from. We recognize that alcohol, drug abuse, and also violence is escalating in our community, and we're all very, very concerned and doing everything that we can to try to get support services out there. One of the things that you acknowledge is COVID-19 is a weapon against victims, forbidding hand washing in an attempt to increase the victim of fear. We know that everything that can be used to hold a victim into a place where they don't feel that they can get the support that they need. This is exactly what's happening. We know this is what's going on with our families, and we want every one of you to know that we're here. If you need additional mental health support, reach out to your supervisors. If you need some additional services, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. If we need to work with, again, one of our other divisions and trying to respond and figure out what else we need to do, that's what we're here for. We recognize that this is not an easy time for any of us. Many of you have been impacted personally. You know people who've been impacted personally, and you know people who are going through exactly what this question or comment is actually talking about. We have to be all in this together in order for us to make it through what we're going through right now. Again, there's plenty of data out there. We understand what's going on. What I'm asking everyone to do is don't turn a blind eye to it. If you have a parent that you are in contact with through your research, through your outreach, through your communication, if you have a child and family in critical harm, we still have the same responsibility that we had before COVID-19. We have to make a call. Our job is still to make sure that we can keep our families safe. Yes, trying to do all of those things in this environment. DCFS also trying to do it in this environment, but our responsibilities for safety for our children has not changed at all. We just are making phone calls and doing things a little bit differently. The responsibility is still there. And so I challenge all of us to remember safety first, and respond, and respond. We have to be here for our children and our families every day, as you always have been. Is there a limit to the number of children we serve remotely? Let me break that question up first, and I'll respond to that one. The limit is the number of children that you can serve in a classroom based on CDC, CDPH, and the guidelines that we've given you. When you're looking at the number of children that were enrolled in that classroom, if you had a classroom where you had 17 children enrolled, for example, as we've said, and you have 10 children that you're serving center-based, you still have an obligation for the other 7. And so what we're trying to do is get to your full enrollment to make sure that they're all being served, either center-based or remotely. But the number should be, if you had 144 children, if you're serving 40 of them center-based, then we expect 104 are being served remotely. Every child, every family should still be serviced through this system. We have more and more families asking for remote and not in-person services, especially for the new program year beginning in September. I put that on one of the slides because that is one of the things that we are all hearing about, and we need to be on top of that. I need information, and that's why we're going to put out a survey, and I'd ask you to also survey your families and find out where they are. This is information that we need to go back to our funders as we're looking at what is happening and what decisions parents are making. Again, yes, parents are saying that they want to move to remote. It's hard sometimes for a mom if she's got a kindergarten or a first grader and a four-year-old, trying to make a decision to get the 4-year-old a center-based care while the other two are still remote. So we are looking at all of that, but we're going to be putting out a survey where we're going to be asking you to give us some updates on where you stand. What is the impact? What are you seeing? Again, what's happening with your staff? What's happening with your family? So that we, again, can put together a report back to our funders about what's happening for September. And so thanks, Dawn, for acknowledging that. We acknowledge that we're hearing it. And in our acknowledgement of that, we are going to be putting out a survey to glean and gather more information so that we're able to be much more responsive to your needs, and that we can make sure that our funder understands what's going on in Chicago as well. How many positive COVID-19s from all delegate and partner sites have been reported to DFSS so far? Linda, I'd have to go into the document. I haven't this morning. I was out of the office last week, and I glanced at it yesterday, but I do know that we've had over 20 reports. I'll put it there, and we can update you and give you some more information about where we are. Some of the reports that we had, and I'll just go over some of what we've gotten within the system. For example, a staff member who was remote, although the person hadn't been in the site, still acknowledged that they had been tested positive. Because agencies have both program ages in their buildings, both school age and early education, we're hearing, for example, we're getting the report still, as we should, that it was a school age teacher, but because that person was in the building, we still got the report. We have had reports of teachers who have tested positive. We have had reports of parents who've tested positive, and most recently, we're getting reports about children that are testing positive. One most recent where a parent had tested positive, and now her child has tested positive. And so we're getting those kinds of reports, but we're tracking it. We're also trying to look to see if they're coming into the same community. So we're looking at it not just by delegate, but we're also looking across and looking at community impact as well. You are going to be receiving updates on the 45-day requirements for screenings on children. I do know that our education team, I know they've already been talking to delegates and trying to make sure that you get your screening tools, because we are still bound and responsible for getting those done, and looking at how we might be able to do screenings remotely. We're working through this right now as we speak, and we'll be giving you guidance, Don, on that. But one of the first things that we wanted to do was make sure that the tools were at least in your hand. And so that was a survey that went out to make sure that we could gather what your needs were for the EZIR, for example, and also for the ASQs. And so staff have already done that part of it. And now we're going to be working to give you guidance on screenings and the other pieces of the work that you need to be doing. Again, we also have hearing and vision responsibilities that we're supposed to do. And how do we do those? And so, again, we're going to be putting all of this together and getting this out to you to help you better understand what your, once we start this program year, what kinds of things will be expected on your behalf for us, making sure that we meet any obligations and requirements. We're also working with HHS, for example, to make sure that we understand what their guidance is on 30 and 45 days and what things we will be doing. Again, we're moving into a new program year. The anticipation was we would be further along with COVID-19, moving into a much more structured program year, but we're not. And so we're keeping our eye on guidance from HHS as well regarding what they're requiring us to do as far as meeting timelines, and we'll be updating you as they update us. The last part of that is home visits conducted virtually. Yes, since we started COVID-19, and we started off by giving guidance that talked about home visits for home visiting programs would be done virtually. For you who are doing center-based for that home visit, yes, conducted virtually. We recognize that this, under normal circumstances, we want you right there in the home conducting a home visit, but we recognize that that's not something that we can do right now. We're obligated to get home visits done at the beginning of a program year, but we do recognize now that those will have to be done virtually.
And there's a question about under enrollment and having the ability. Scott, I believe that's your question about the fiscal year. We've discussed the under enrollment. At what juncture will DFSS allow agencies who could fill the gap to apply for those slots? The application is always open. We don't cut off the application. And so we understand that we're having challenges with under enrollment. The way to apply for slots and formally request additional slots would be our slot reallocation application. And so we welcome anyone who can fill the gap to go ahead and submit that application. Yeah, please do so.
Documentation, it states the money can be used for that you're getting for COVID-19. Can it be used to purchase tablets? Tiffany had talked about it a while ago about the items that we were looking for delegates and partners to have in their hands. We're still in COVID-19, what we wanted to do, and we recognize the digital divide that is out there, both in many of our delegates not having enough across your organizations, but also making sure that you had access to some for your parents. And so, yes, the COVID-19 Cares Act dollars that you're receiving, yes, the documentation that is out there states what kinds of things that we are looking for you to purchase. And yes, those kinds of things included the purchase of tablets, Leah. And I apologize, Cindy, we sent out a notification. Yes, the meeting, actually, we had to change the timing of the meeting to 9:30. Yes, the original one did say 10, but we did send out an acknowledgement updating the time. Are you able to provide more clarity on attendance for virtual learners? Are we able to count participation if parents are participating in recorded events after the event has occurred? I would say I'm going to answer the first part. Right now, what we've been asking everyone to do is to continue to put your information into your case notes, different what you're doing as far as working with families. And if the parent did not participate during the recorded event, I don't see your ability to count that after that person looks at the recording, because that's not at the exact same time. But when you're looking at parents, you still want them to have access to recorded events. I would notate that parent did actually review a recorded event, that they had access to the information that you sent out there, so that they're aware of what you're covering and what you're doing. So if they missed the event when it's being done, if it's recorded and them being able to see it later, it's still countable as an activity, but it is not counted for attendance, because attendance is at a point in time. We have been working with COPA, and I need to check in with my team about the COPA system. I know right now we set it up where you could check remote for the remote attendance for children. Tiffany, do you have an update on that? I hate to throw this to you. I know you just got back in the office.
No, that's okay. So I believe the system has already been set up to go ahead and actually account for in-person attendance separately than remote attendance. What's happening now, and I don't want to speak too out of turn here, but Craig is working with COPA to develop a tutorial, some type of demonstration, so that we can get out to all of you guys, so that you're aware on how you can go about doing that. I know that some of our agencies have already kind of started to use the feature, but we want to make sure that you're using it properly. And so we will be getting something out to you soon, so that we can show you and demonstrate to you how it works.
Thanks, Tiffany. The update that I have on ColaQ, I was on a call this week with our regional office, and what we were told is we should be getting our notices of awards in the next few days or week. And so as soon as we receive that information in, we'll start the process of everything that we need to do as far as documenting and budgeting and everything that we need to do on your behalf. The update for you again is we are anticipating receiving that information in the next few days. We have not received those as of yet, but do anticipate receiving them in the next few days. Thanks for that question, Betty.
And I'm sure folks are wondering too about the CARES Act funding. Just so you know, we've already received the draft boilerplate. We've given the attorneys some language that we wanted to see embedded in there. And so hopefully we'll be getting that to you out the door soon. I'm hoping that we can have that occur before our next meeting. But if anybody has any questions or want to check in on where we are, just feel free to go ahead and email me.
What suggestions do we have for programs to manage the workforce issues that will occur due to staff being impacted by CPS? I'm going to open up the mic in a minute, excuse me, for us to talk about that. I'm going to go to the mic for a couple of people. And then I'm going to come back to see what other questions we have. Scott, I saw that you had, do we have to write our questions? I saw you wrote a question, but we can open up the mic and allow you to talk.
Did you, who should I open the mic for?
Scott Perkins.
Okay. Scott, you're unmuted. If you just click on your little microphone button, you can unmute yourself.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We sure can, Scott. Good morning.
Good morning to everyone. Saretho, thank you for continuing to host these meetings.
No problem.
I'd like to echo a concern that Linda raised.
Mm-hmm.
I think what would be most relevant for community-based organizations is to hear the data about what's happening for COVID-19 within community-based organizations. And I'll just, be fully transparent. You know this, but the rest of the folks on this call do not. We've had 5 cases in the last 5 weeks. At the rate we're going, we will have a case every week at every one of the centers within our portfolio. Obviously, we don't hope that will happen, but that's what the trend line is actually showing. The positivity rate, as well as the number of positive cases, has doubled in the city of Chicago over the last 30 days. Many of the talking heads always talk about the threshold is 8%. I believe that's even Governor Pritzker's threshold for really shutting things down again. And most recently, over the last few days, we're trending at 6.8%. My greatest concern is when this initially occurred and they shut down schools, we were treated as an afterthought. No one really spoke to how this affected community-based organizations. Governor Pritzker said on an open mic that shutting down preschools would exacerbate the challenges that working families already have. And we also know that everybody says that although children aren't immune, it may not affect them as greatly. But what we can't discount is how they can be a carrier to someone who it would affect greatly. So I guess my real question is anyone lobbying, or can someone give it consideration to lobby CDPH and our local political leadership to speak to our needs with priority, as opposed to waiting down the road and that we hear it last? And again, I would just really love to see the data on what's happening across agencies, because the agencies that I know that I talk to with frequency, we're all experiencing cases.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you, Scott. And yes, we are, and that's why I said, over 20. And so, yes, we have had impact of cases across our sites. And you're absolutely right. Some of you in some communities are experiencing more than others, and other communities, we haven't had any reports. But at the end of the day, any report is a report of a positive COVID-19, which is a concern. And so we are looking at that. I'm going to be working with my team, and I also have a call with some other agencies as we're talking about these concerns. Scott, these are conversations that are being lifted up. We do have, and I'm going to be working again, as we did before we got to this point of opening childcare, to make sure that we're talking about what's happening and what some of the impacts are. For me on our side of it, that's why it was important for us to have you report not only to other outside sources, but also to us, so that we have information that I could then take to sources and talk from. And it's not that I wanted anyone to have a positive case, but I did need data in order to do that. And we have some now, and we're able to use that voice and now start talking about some of what we're seeing. Again, yes, we do know that childcare and the way that it has been seen and I think it's now the urgency and the importance of it is clearer now for some people as a result of what we've been going through, for example, here in the state of Illinois and across our nation, as people have recognized that employment systems are held up by childcare systems. And so we can't talk about one without talking about another. And so we're hoping that we're able to do much more alignment around all of that as we move forward. There's been many lessons learned through this system of COVID-19 around all of our systems of employment and workforce and all of those things. And we're hoping that these lessons learned in these first months will be lessons learned that will help us make some decisions in the coming months. Yes, you're absolutely right, Scott, to the point of numbers that are going up in the state of Illinois, numbers that are going up in our region. Yes, those numbers are increasing as far as the positivity rates and the number of cases. And those are concerning for all of us. And we're keeping our eye on it and trying to keep our finger on what's going on and constantly making sure that we're able to hear what's being said both at the state level and the city level around all of this. There's going to be more engagement in us back at the table talking about what's happened since reopening childcare and what kinds of concerns we need to be raising up. And so to your point, yes, these are conversations that need to go up. We now have some data. We will get data out to all of the delegates. What we needed to do was have the data come in so that we could systematically see what we were seeing, so that we can now do exactly what you're asking, so that you have a better idea of what's happening out in programs as far as positive rates of COVID-19 and the kinds of information that we're receiving. We have seen, to your point, there have been upticks in it over the last few weeks. As cases go up, some of the positive cases also are coming in as well regarding what's happening in child care centers. And so these are things that are concerning for all of us. We need to keep our hands on it. We need to continue to report. We need to continue to follow the guidance. And we need to also understand, to your other point, that looking forward at child care and all of the industries where people are interacting in groups, as the number goes up, decisions will have to be made about whether or not keeping these industries open are the best guidance that we can offer. And I do know, again, we went from no child care to emergency child care, and then we reopened child care. And so there's a lot of discussions to be had about what do we do with child care in Illinois. I will say, even though we have numbers, and I am not trying to by any stretch of the imagination slight the fact that we have COVID-19 cases, but I will say, based on the number of classrooms and sites that we have open, when we look at our percentages are low, and that's a good thing. Having lower percentages is a good thing. I don't want to see those creep up. I don't want families and staff or anyone impacted by it. But we at least we are not having numbers at a high rate, which is a good thing. You're having 5 across your agencies is concerning. I'm sure for you it's concerning, for us. But we're looking overall across all of the sites and looking at all of the communities and trying to gauge data that way. But we are keeping our eye on it and continue to look for it. I'm looking back at questions, and I'm going to reopen the mic to see if anyone else wants to join the conversation. If you have a comment, or something that you want to open and bring to the conversation, if you can put that in here as a question. I'm looking through them now. And I will say again, as I stated when we started, we do have to, as a team here, we have back-to-back meetings this morning. So we are going to jump off at 10:30. So we've got about 7 more minutes to go through some of what you have here. Do we have an update on when you'll see the CARES Act PPE? And that's one of your questions, Scott. And again, we don't have an update as of today. We are waiting on the update from fiscal, and we will get that back out to you as soon as we have an update on that.
Zilli has a question. She has her hand raised.
Go ahead and open her mic, please. Thank you.
Zilli, you just need to click on your microphone to unmute yourself.
Okay. Can everyone hear me?
We can, Zilli. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just wondering, Scott raised a great point, so it's kind of two parts to this. With the rates going up and with colleges closing, a lot of our parents are making comments like, well, if it's not safe for my kindergartner to go, who's just 1 year older, than my other kid, why is it safe for them to come to the daycare, which we don't have answers for. And I do think that positivity rates in the centers will continue. It's just going to be a part of life. But speaking of continuity of care, how does that look? I don't think that's good for the children or staff, because then you're, every week you're closing down for 14 days, 7 days. You're just constantly closing and reopening, closing and reopening. And then what happens is people will begin to disengage, staff and parents and students alike. So that was one comment. You could maybe speak to that. And then the other thing is the importance of blended funding, which you stated so eloquently during the entire RFP process, and now the roadblock that we're up against with CCAP and having to wait long periods of time before you get approval for attendance waivers, and fighting them for that, because if parents aren't coming, now the kids aren't getting, we're not able to vouch for them. And we do have staff and expenses that are allocated specifically to CCAP. I know I've spoken to owners and directors who are really wondering, should they get out? Because funds are just drying up. Parents are disengaging. It's not clear how long these waivers will be, particularly from the feds, will be put in place. What happens after September? What happens after November? It's just a very scary time. So are you in communication with the state to help out with collaboration programs, not having to go through such a long and arduous waiver request process, and having the old rules extended where sites just get paid at 100% if they're a collaboration site?
Okay. So there were a couple of things in there, Zilli. So as far as the federal information, what we do know is that what we have right now is through September. They are engaging as we go forward, and will continue to look at what's happening state by state. They're doing it state by state. Every state is in the same predicament as we are. And so as soon as we get additional guidance, and we're expecting something very, very soon regarding, is it going to extend itself past September? And so wish we could do something and be more forward with that, but we can't as far as the federal dollar is concerned. Yes, we are in conversation and trying to have a meeting right now with IDHS regarding the information and concerns that you have regarding the attendance waivers and everything that you're going through, making sure that they understand the impacts that that's having on programs like yours and others. We've heard it, and we're trying to do what we can to make sure that we have some responses to them, to let them know of the impact, and do everything that we can, if possible, to get them to understand the impact and then reconsider. So we're working on that as well. And then we understand parents are concerned. This has gone on much longer than any of us could have anticipated. What we have to ask is do everything that we can to keep engaging parents. Parents have a lot of concerns. Parents are, from closing childcare, losing jobs, their lives have been impacted exponentially through all of this and trying to keep up with everything else that's going on. Sometimes, you know, just burying your head and saying, just give me a few minutes to figure out life is what I need right now, and I'll come back to you. And so we recognize that those are things that are happening with our families as a result of everything that's going on. Those families are still enrolled with you, Zilli, right now. Unless you've dropped a parent, that is still your parent. And so what we ask you to do is keep trying to engage those families. And the reason that we want to do that is because we know the best place for every child is in safe care. And if we can keep in touch with parents, then parents don't go and isolate themselves from the world so much. At least we can be in contact with them, and to the person's conversation before, at least if we can get a conversation, get a visit with the mom, get her on a Zoom or call or whatever we can do, we can at least key into what we believe is going on with their family and can kind of support them. If we lose that, then we lose sight of what's happening with that parent and with that child. So I'm encouraging everyone to continue to do everything you can to keep your families as near and dear to you as you possibly can through this process. As we get more information, and we're trying to stay in touch with everyone, state and federal, regarding funding, we're going to keep you up to date as we can. Right now, we know we have flexibility. We want to know that our flexibility continues, and we're going to continue to work with that. But in order for me to do that, that's why I keep asking you for information, because then I'm giving them information about the fact that our families are concerned about being in center-based care and wanting to continue to do remote. That's how we got here with remote. First of all, was being able to talk about the fact that we're able to, that you were already working with families, could consistently work with them, and this model will work for us. And so we're doing everything that we can. And again, less confident about any relief coming, which is causing depression. I get it. I know what's happening with families, for example, who were getting the federal unemployment, and then all of a sudden, everybody went home in DC and left them with nothing. And so families are struggling, agencies are struggling, and people aren't feeling like everything is going to be there. I can't offer you absolutes, and I really wish I could, because these are things that are outside of my hand. But I'm on the phone, I'm in contact, and I'm doing everything that I can to keep up with it. And what we're doing is getting information from you that's helping us make our case for what we need for our programs here in Chicago. We got here by getting information from you that helped us make our case federally. We're going to, and with the state, we're going to continue to get information from you. We've got information now that we're going to be sharing with IDHS regarding CCAP, because those are serious impacts across our programs and their fiscal ability going forward. And so that's what we're doing. We're behind the scenes working on behalf of all of you. I know it's causing depression, and I know it is, hey, I'm just going to say this, I'm just going to be frank, and I need to get off and get on with my staff. But it's keeping me up at night, because I am extremely concerned, as you are. But I know that the fight can't be given up, that I still have to stay at the table, I have to stay on the call, and I have to stay in everybody's ear. Getting information from you helps me make your case, and I'm going to continue to make your case as best I possibly can. I recognize that we didn't get through all of your questions and all of your concerns. I'm going to take what we did not get through, and we'll do some questions and answers and get some information back out to you. Again, we do need to move on. We've got our group. I think, Zilli, your mic is still open. We need to get to our next meeting, which is with our all staff, because they have concerns, I'm sure, as well as you understand. They're living through COVID-19 here in the Children's Services Division as well. Zilli, did you want to make another comment? I saw that you added a couple of other comments as well. Give Zilli a minute.
Sure. I was just asking in the chat box what DHS's response has been thus far to your request to allowing 100% payment for CCAP for collaboration programs. Have they been just responding with a hard no, or does it seem like this is something that's attainable just based off of what you know about them and your past experience?
I haven't gotten a hard no, Zilli. I'll just say I haven't gotten a hard no. But we are going to continue to talk to them. They haven't come back and changed it either. So I'm just getting as much information as I can and trying to make the case as big and large as I can. And we have some additional information that's been shared. The commissioner and I we're trying to get a call right now with IDHS to raise these issues so that they can understand what the impact is for programs here in Chicago. The not allowing the remote learning, for example, so that you can count that as attendance. These are all issues that we're raising as well. And so as soon as we know more, we're going to get back to you on that. Okay?
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And again, I apologize everyone for having to jump off. I thank you again for being with us today. We know that there's some other questions in the chat box in the questions, and so we'll get back to those and send some information out to all of you. Hope everybody will have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll be talking to you very soon. Thanks, everyone.